When you were a kid and felt sad, what did your mum say? You have no reason to be sad. Stop being dramatic, it's nothing. When you felt angry, what would she say then? You have no right to be angry. Lower your voice. Children don't have opinions. If any of this sounds familiar, this video is going to explain something that will change how you understand yourself forever. Carl Jung discovered a hidden cause of narcissism, a cause that doesn't involve physical abuse, doesn't involve obvious neglect, doesn't involve anything that leaves visible scars. It involves something much more subtle: mothers who never validate their children's feelings. This sounds small, right? Seems insignificant. Seems like something every kid goes through. But Jung discovered that this absence of validation creates deep wounds. Wounds that shape the entire structure of the personality. Wounds that can produce narcissists. I'm going to show you exactly how this happens, and when you understand it, you'll finally understand why you have so much trouble knowing what you even feel. Let's start with what it means to validate feelings. Emotional validation is simple. It's when someone acknowledges that what you're feeling is real, not necessarily correct, not necessarily justified, just real. A child cries because they lost a toy. A validating mum says, "I know you're sad. It sucks to lose something you like. She doesn't need to fix it. She doesn't need to buy another toy. She just recognizes that the sadness exists and is legitimate." A child gets angry because they can't do something. A validating mum says, "I see that you're angry. It's frustrating when you want something and you can't have it." She doesn't need to give in. She doesn't need to change the rule. She just recognizes that the anger exists and makes sense. That's validation. And it's through this that the child learns that their feelings are real, that their internal experience matters, that what happens inside them is legitimate and worthy of recognition. But what happens when the mum never validates? The child learns that their feelings are wrong, that what they feel isn't real, that there's something defective in them for feeling what they feel. And here are the specific mechanisms by which mothers invalidate. The first mechanism is direct denial. The child expresses a feeling and the mother denies that it exists. You're not sad. You're not angry. You're not afraid. This is emotional gaslighting. The mother literally denies the reality of the child's experience. And the child's brain, which is still learning to trust itself, absorbs the message. My mum knows reality better than I do. If she says I'm not feeling this, then I'm not. And the child learns to distrust themselves, to doubt their own experience, to look outside to know what they're feeling instead of looking inside. The second mechanism is invalidation by comparison. The child expresses a feeling and the mother compares it to something worse. You're sad about that? There are kids starving. You're afraid of that? Some people have real problem. You're angry. I'm the one who should be angry at you. The message is clear. Your feeling isn't important enough. Your suffering isn't big enough. You have no right to feel because others have bigger problems, and the child learns to minimize, to feel guilty for feeling, to think their feelings are exaggerated, dramatic, unjustified. The third mechanism is invalidation by judgment. The child expresses a feeling and the mother judges. That's silly. That's ridiculous. That's childish. You're too sensitive. You're too dramatic. The feeling isn't just denied, it's criticized. And the child learns that feeling is a defect, that having emotions is a weakness, that the person they are who feels things is wrong. The fourth mechanism is invalidation by rationalization. The child expresses a feeling and the mother tries to convince them it doesn't make sense. You shouldn't be sad because that's not important. You shouldn't be angry because he didn't mean to. You shouldn't be afraid because nothing's going to happen. The mother uses logic to dismantle the emotion. And yes, logically it might even make sense, but emotions don't work by logic. And the child who hears this learns that feelings need to be rationally justified to be valid, that if it doesn't make logical sense, it's not real. The fifth mechanism is invalidation by diversion. The child expresses a feeling and the mother changes the subject. Okay, let's do something else. Look what I bought. Let's watch TV. The feeling isn't explicitly denied. It's ignored. And the child learns that emotions are inconvenient, that they should be swallowed quickly, that they don't deserve time or attention. The sixth mechanism is invalidation by guilt. The child expresses a feeling and the mother becomes the victim. You make me so sad when you act like that. You make me so tired with all this drama. Look what you're doing to me. The child's feeling becomes a problem for the mother. And the child learns that expressing emotions hurts others, that they're responsible for the mother's feelings, that it's better to swallow it down than to cause damage. Now let me show you what happens to a child who grows up without emotional validation. They develop what Jung called dissociation of the feeling function. The ability to feel and process emotions disconnects from the rest of the psyche. This manifests in several ways. The first way is alexithymia, the inability to identify emotions. Ask this person how they're feeling, and they don't know. It's not that they don't want to say, it's that they really don't know. The connection between emotional experience and consciousness has been severed. They might be angry and not realize it, might be sad and not recognize it, might be afraid and call it something else, because they never learned that their feelings were real enough to deserve attention. The second way is intellectualization. The person learns to process everything through the mind. They analyze emotions instead of feeling them. They rationalize instead of experiencing. They live from the neck up because they were taught that what happens from the neck down isn't trustworthy. They might talk about emotions eloquently. They might theoretically understand what they should be feeling. But the connection with the real experience is broken. The third way is somatization. Emotions that aren't processed consciously appear in the body. Headaches, digestive problems, chronic muscle tension. The body carries what the mind has been trained to ignore. This person goes to the doctor with physical symptoms and the tests show nothing because the problem isn't physical, it's emotional. But they can't access the emotion that's causing the symptom. The fourth way is explosion. Emotions that are constantly suppressed eventually explode. You spend years swallowing anger, and suddenly you explode over something tiny. You spend years denying sadness, and suddenly you fall into deep depression. This seems disproportionate, but it's not. It's the accumulation of decades of unprocessed emotions, finally finding a way out. And there's a fifth way that's particularly relevant to narcissism: the substitution of feelings for performance. The person learns to perform emotions. Instead of feeling them, they know they should be sad, so they act sad. They know they should be happy, so they act happy. But inside, they feel nothing. This creates a profound disconnection between the true self and the persona presented to the world. The person lives as if they're acting in a role, watching themselves from the outside, disconnected from their own experience. And this is fertile ground for narcissism. Because when you don't know what you feel, you don't know who you are. And when you don't know who you are, you construct an artificial identity, an inflated or deflated persona that compensates for the emptiness left by the absence of a true self. And there's something that Carl Jung observed about how this specifically affects the formation of identity. Identity is built through emotions. You discover who you are by what makes you happy, by what makes you sad, by what makes you angry, by what scares you. Emotions are the compass that points to the true self, according to Carl Jung. But when emotions are systematically invalidated, that compass is destroyed. The person doesn't know what they like because they don't trust the joy they feel. They don't know what they dislike because they don't trust the repulsion they experience. They don't know who they are because the tool for self-discovery has been deactivated. And then they do what they can. They build identity from the outside instead of from the inside out. They look at what others value and decide that's what they are. They look at what others reject and decide that's what they are not. This creates what Jung called a as-if personality, a person who lives as if they are someone else, as if they like these things, as if they want this life. But inside, they know none of it is real. They know it's just a collection of external expectations, dressed up as identity. Carl Jung really hit on something here, and this person can be very successful externally. They can achieve everything that society values. They can have the perfect career, the perfect marriage, the perfect life. But internally they feel an emptiness that no achievement fills because it's not their life. It's the life they performed, the life that others wanted, the life that seemed right, but never the life they wanted. Because they never knew what they wanted, because they never trusted the emotions that would tell them that. And there's a critical moment that frequently happens with these people, usually in midlife, usually after conquering everything that should make them happy. It's the moment when they stop and ask, is this it? Is this what I wanted? Why don't I feel anything? Jung called this the individuation crisis. It's the moment when the persona built from the outside begins to crack, when the question, who am I, really becomes impossible to ignore. It's a painful crisis, but it's also an opportunity. The opportunity to finally build identity from the inside out, to finally discover what you really feel, to finally live a life that is yours. And there are specific consequences in relationships that need to be named. People who grew up without emotional validation have difficulty with intimacy, because intimacy requires sharing emotions. It requires showing yourself vulnerable. It requires saying, I'm feeling this way, and trusting that the other person will receive it. But how do you share emotions that you don't even know you have? How do you be vulnerable when you've been trained to think that vulnerability is weakness? How do you trust that the other person will receive it when the first person who should have received it never did? These people are frequently seen as cold by their partners, distant, disconnected, and they don't understand the complaint because they're doing everything they think they should be doing. They're performing the relationship perfectly. They're just not feeling anything. And there's another devastating pattern. People without emotional validation frequently choose partners who also don't validate because it's familiar, because it's what they know. Because deep down, they still believe that emotions don't deserve recognition. And so the cycle perpetuates. The partner invalidates in the same way that the mother invalidated, and the person accepts it because it's what they've always known, because it seems normal. Breaking this pattern requires awareness. It requires perceiving when you're being invalidated. It requires deliberately choosing people who recognize emotions instead of denying them. And there's a specific impact on motherhood and fatherhood. People who grew up without validation frequently have difficulty validating their children, not because they don't want to, because they don't know how, because they never received it, because the model they have is exactly the opposite. They see their child cry, and the automatic impulse is to say, stop crying. They see their child angry, and the impulse is to say, lower your voice. It's the maternal complex running. It's the mother's voice coming out of their mouth, and so the invalidation passes from generation to generation. Each mother who wasn't validated creates children who aren't validated, who grow up to be mothers who don't validate. Breaking this cycle is one of the most important jobs that a person can do. It requires recognizing the pattern in yourself. It requires doing differently. Even when the automatism screams to repeat, it requires consciously choosing to validate, even when you were never validated. And there are specific signs that indicate you grew up without emotional validation. The first sign is the difficulty crying. People without validation frequently can't cry, or they cry alone, hidden, as if it was something shameful, because they learned that tears were problematic, that crying was weakness, that showing sadness was wrong. The second sign is the difficulty asking for emotional help. These people can ask for practical help. Can you help me with this? But asking for emotional help, I'm feeling bad and I need support, is almost impossible, because they learned that emotional needs were invalid. The third sign is the distrust of their own emotions. When they feel something, the first reaction is to doubt. Am I exaggerating? Do I have the right to feel this? Is it real? The voice of the mother who invalidated has become an internal voice that continues to invalidate. The fourth sign is the need to justify emotions. Before expressing any feeling, the person feels the need to explain why they're feeling it, to prove that it's justified, to defend themselves before even being attacked, because they learned that emotions without justification weren't valid. The fifth sign is the difficulty identifying needs. People who haven't experienced validation often struggle to understand their own needs, because needs are frequently expressed through emotions. And if you're disconnected from what you're feeling, you're essentially disconnected from what you truly need. You end up prioritizing the needs of others, because at least those are clear and defined. Let me give you a very concrete example. A woman in her early 40s came to therapy because her marriage was on the rocks. Her husband complained that she was emotionally cold, distant, that she never seemed to know what she was feeling. He described it as living with a wall, a barrier. She didn't quite grasp his complaint. I do everything right, she said. I take care of the house. I take care of the kids. I work full-time. What more does he want? When I asked her how she felt about her marriage, she fell silent, thought for a long time. Finally, she said, I don't know. Am I supposed to feel some kind of way? That response revealed everything. When we explored her childhood, we found the classic pattern: a mother who never validated her feelings, who responded to every emotional expression with, "You shouldn't be feeling that way." A mother who would rationalize, compare, deflect, and even blame. A mirror reflecting a false image. She learned very early on that emotions were problematic, a burden, that the way to survive was to shut them down, disconnect. And she disconnected so completely that by the time she reached her 40s, she no longer knew how to reconnect. The therapeutic work with her was slow. We had to start with the basics. What are you feeling in your body right now? Any tension? Any discomfort? Any sensations? And gradually, through her body, she began to reconnect. She began to realize that she had emotions, that they existed even though she had been trained to ignore them, that they could be accessed if she paid attention. It took years, but she did it. She learned to identify emotions, to express them, to connect with her husband in a way that had never been possible before. The roots of her being blossomed at last. And something interesting happened. When she started to feel, She also began to understand why she had been so cold. She felt the rage she had for her mother, the sadness for everything she hadn't received, the fear that had always been there but had never been acknowledged, like a storm brewing within. And through feeling, she began to heal. And let me tell you what happened with her marriage. When she started to feel, her husband noticed. At first, he was taken aback. He said she seemed different, more present, more real. And gradually the connection between them began to form. Not a connection of functions, of roles, of performance, but a connection of two people who really see each other, who really feel each other. Masks fell away. The marriage that had been on the brink of ending was transformed, not because the external problems changed, but because she was finally able to be present, finally able to feel, finally able to connect. And there's something important about the process she went through. Reconnecting with emotions isn't pleasant at first. When you spend decades disconnected and suddenly start to feel, what comes first is usually pain, rage, sadness, fear, everything that has been repressed throughout your life. The wounded inner child crying out. She spent months feeling rage at the mother who never validated her, at the father who never intervened, at herself for having lost so much time disconnected. The rage was intense, scary. It seemed endless. Then came the sadness, the mourning for everything that could have been, for the child who was never validated, for the relationships that were superficial, for the life that was lived halfway. And only after the rage and the sadness did the lighter emotions come. Joy, gratitude, love, as if the emotional system had to first process what was repressed before it could access the rest. This is important to know, because many people start to reconnect with emotions, feel the pain, and think they are getting worse, that the therapy isn't working, that it was better when they were disconnected. It wasn't better. It was numb. And numbness isn't healing. It's just postponing the pain. Reconnection requires going through the pain first. It requires processing what was repressed. It requires feeling everything that should have been felt and validated in childhood but wasn't. The roots of the problem. And only after traversing that is the full capacity to feel restored. Not just the painful emotions, all the emotions, including joy, including peace, including love. Now the question that matters, is it possible to recover the capacity to feel? Carl Jung said, yes, but the path is particular, because the wound lies in the very capacity to feel. Access to healing is also compromised. Jung knew this well. The healing begins with the body. When the mind has been trained to ignore emotions, the body stores the memory, tensions, postures, breathing patterns. The body knows what the mind has forgotten. Somatic practices help to reconnect. Yoga, conscious breathing, massage, anything that brings attention to the body and to the sensations it carries. The healing continues with naming. Learning to name emotions is crucial. Many people who grew up without validation literally don't have an emotional vocabulary. They know happy, sad, angry, but they don't know frustrated, disappointed, vulnerable, anxious, melancholic. Expanding the emotional vocabulary expands the capacity to recognize. The more words you have, the more nuances you can perceive. And nuances are important because emotions aren't simple. The healing passes through external validation, finding people who validate, who listen when you express something and say, that makes sense that you're feeling that way, who don't deny, who don't compare, who don't judge. The mirror reflects back acceptance. Each experience of external validation repairs a little of the wound, teaches the brain that emotions can be recognized, that there is space for them in the world, and eventually the healing arrives at self-validation, learning to say to yourself what the mother never said. I see that I am sad. That makes sense. I see that I am angry. That's legitimate. I see that I am afraid. That's real. This is emotional reparenting, giving yourself the recognition that should have come from the mother but didn't. And there's a specific exercise that can help. When you notice that you are feeling something, stop. Don't try to change it. Don't try to rationalize it. Don't try to compare it to bigger problems. Just say out loud or mentally, what I'm feeling now is real. It doesn't need to make sense. It doesn't need to be justified. It's real because I am feeling it. It seems simple, but for someone who has spent their life being invalidated, this affirmation is revolutionary. It's the first time someone recognizes the emotion as real, even if that someone is you. Another exercise. Keep an emotional diary. Every day, write down at least 3 emotions you felt. It doesn't need to be profound. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It could be, I felt irritation in traffic. I felt joy when I saw my dog. I felt anxiety before the meeting. The goal isn't to analyze, it's just to record and to train the brain to perceive emotions that previously went unnoticed, and to expand emotional awareness gradually. And a third exercise. Ask people you trust how they see you emotionally. People disconnected from their emotions often have no idea how they come across to others. They think they're being expressive when they're just stone-faced. They think they're being neutral. When they're clearly irritated, external feedback can be revealing. It can shine a light on emotions you didn't even know you were expressing. It can create a bridge between your disconnected internal experience and your visible external expression. And there's something about time that I need to mention. Emotional reconnection doesn't happen quickly. You're not going to do one exercise and suddenly be all connected. It doesn't work that way. It takes years of practice. Years of training, years of consciously choosing to pay attention when your automatic response is to ignore. And there will be relapses. Moments when you revert to disconnecting. Moments when that invalidating voice of your mum shouts louder. Moments when it seems easier to just not feel. That's normal. It's part of the process. The important thing isn't to never relapse. It's to get back on track every time you do. And over time, the periods of connection will get longer. The periods of disconnection will get shorter. Your capacity will grow stronger. Until one day, you realize you can feel naturally, that you don't need to make a conscious effort anymore. That connection has become the default instead of the exception. That day exists. That transformation is possible. And it begins with the decision to try. And healing culminates in what Carl Jung called the integration of the feeling function. The capacity to feel isn't just restored, it's consciously integrated into the personality. The person starts using emotions as information, as a guide, as an essential part of who they are. This doesn't mean being overwhelmed by emotions. It means feeling them, recognizing them, and consciously choosing how to respond. It's the hallmark of emotional maturity. It's the opposite of narcissistic dissociation. And for the mums who are watching, if you recognize these patterns in yourself, there's still time. It doesn't matter how old your kids are. Validation can start now. When your child expresses an emotion, resist the impulse to deny, compare, judge, rationalize, deflect, or blame. Simply say, I see that you're feeling that. That makes sense. You don't have to agree with the behavior. You can set boundaries. You can say no. But the feeling itself needs to be recognized as real. And if you can't do that, ask yourself why. Probably you also had your feelings invalidated. Probably you also carry that wound. And probably you need to heal it in yourself before you can validate your children. The cycle of invalidation breaks when someone stops, when someone decides to recognize, when someone chooses to say, "I see what you're feeling, and it's real." This video exists because there are people who choose to bring light to the family shadows. Every minute of content like this demands deep research into Jung, into developmental psychology, into trauma dynamics. And doing this while algorithms favor the superficial isn't easy. The super thanks down there isn't just financial support. It's you saying that this truth about emotional invalidation needs to be known. When you click that golden heart, you help other people who don't know what they feel to find what you found here. You become part of the people who are breaking generational cycles. If you've made it this far, you've probably recognized something of yourself in what I've said. You've probably realized that you have difficulty identifying emotions. You've probably understood why you feel disconnected from yourself, but the connection can be restored. The capacity to feel can be recovered. The true self that was disconnected can be reconnected. Comment down below. What's the phrase your mum used to invalidate you the most? You have no reason. What nonsense. Look what you make me do. Write it here, because naming the pattern is the first step to breaking it. You don't have to continue disconnected. You don't have to continue not knowing what you feel. You can learn to feel. You can learn to recognize. You can learn to validate yourself. And it starts now, with the choice to pay attention. With the act of asking, "What am I feeling?" With the permission to let the answer exist, whatever it may be. Your feelings are real. They always have been. The mom who didn't validate you was wrong. And now you can give yourself the recognition she never did. The choice is yours, and it starts now.